teaching people that no, like you're still allowed to be fully authentic around me. Like it's not going to do anything. I'm in control of my emotions just like you're in control of yours, is a thing that I have to do with my friends now. So it's just another new normal.
Hello, and welcome back to You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I'm the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions, Mental Health and Behavioral Health Counseling in Iowa. We are still doing telehealth sessions for outpatient mental health therapy, individuals, couples, children, families, or we are doing in-person sessions in any of our 6 office locations, as well as our in-home services. And I'll let Krista tell you about those.
I'm Krista Hunt. I am the Vice President at Heart and Solutions in charge of our BHIS department. So BHIS stands for Behavioral Health Intervention Services, and that is our program where we go in home and work with children ages 4 through 18 and their families on different behavioral skills. And we can also see them in school, in the office, or telehealth right now as well. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
So we post on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Central every single Sunday. So we encourage you to batch up your clean laundry to put away or whatever other horrible task you hate doing, whether it is batching your meal prep for the week so that you have all of your lunches all made and ready to go for the week, or your breakfast, walk on the treadmill while you listen to it, or put away all of your clean clothes into outfits. That's what Krista and I will be doing. That gives you that entire week to get scheduled with your counselor, or to get connected with our guest from this week or our resources available this week. So today we have a counselor here at Heart and Solution. She is a behavioral health intervention counselor. That's that in-home counseling service for children 4 to 18 or 19. And Ruth is a BHIS counselor, behavioral health counselor in Ames, Ankeny, and Waukee, and pretty much any area around there. And this is for that in-home counseling service. So welcome, Ruth. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So you got your degree in English, and now you're a behavioral health counselor. How did that happen? Walk us through that.
Yeah, so I originally was going to teach English to middle and high school students. And then I realized my senior year that I actually really did not want to do that anymore. And so I took a break from college, kind of figured stuff out. I was having a mental health crisis at the time. And so it was just better for me to take a break. And so during that time, I started working at a PMIC facility. And I was a youth associate there and ran BHIS groups. And so I just kind of fell in love with social work and BHIS and decided that was kind of what I wanted to do.
Awesome. Okay, so you mentioned mental health crisis. So do you want to go into that a little bit and what happened there?
Yeah, so I ended up getting a bipolar diagnosis, but the signs had started earlier that year at the end of my junior year of college. And so I was going through a whole crisis going between mania and depression throughout the beginning of the year, and eventually just sought counseling and went to a psychiatrist and was able to get a diagnosis that winter.
So what signs were you seeing? You said there were some early signs and then some signs that you were like, I can't ignore these. What were those signs that you were seeing?
Yeah, so with hypomania, because I'm bipolar 2, not 1, with hypomania, you have the same signs as bipolar 1 and full-on mania, but the highs are just a little less intense, but the lows can be just as devastating. So some of the highs where you just get kind of reckless, spending money, all kinds of things, making impulsive choices. You're not sleeping very well. There was a lot of insomnia going on. And then the depressive were just as dark as you could think. Just very much clinging on to life as much as I could, just based on my friend's support system. They really kept me here. So yeah, just really, really high highs, like you're at a concert, and really low lows. So
What is the difference between bipolar 2 and bipolar 1?
yeah, so they both are chronic mood swings that go from manic states to depressive episodes. But the bipolar one, you're going to see that for like more extended periods of time awake. The highs are much higher, so they'll have a lot more symptoms there. Whereas the bipolar 2, you'll still have that hypomania, but you're awake for less time. So, like, you go maybe 4 days with little to no sleep instead of like a very long time. And yeah, the depressive episodes are just as severe, but it's really the difference in the highs.
So you started treatment, you got the diagnosis, and then what happened?
Yeah, so I was able to get stable. So I started counseling that summer, crisis counseling with a great counselor. And then I actually switched counselors a couple months later to a counselor that I had had when I was 18. We just had always gotten along. And so I knew that I would be having more beneficial times and sessions with her. So I switched with her. We ended up getting me into the psychiatrist, got meds sorted out, therapy, and then by May, I was stable.
I know you mentioned you had a lot of different counseling experiences that kind of led up to now into with your counselor that you then went back to when you were 18 then. So do you kind of want to go through like that process of finding that good counselor that you were able to be with now?
Yeah, so in 2016, it was my senior year of high school, and my best friend actually ended up dying by suicide. And so I kind of was devastated by that, obviously. And so I started just exhibiting pretty classic depression symptoms. And my mom basically one day was like, "You can stay home from school today and sleep, but you're going to counseling this week." And I said, "That's fine. Like, I can't do school today. We'll do it." And so she found this counselor actually. And we just connected really well the first session. My mom had like had me read her bio online and saw that there were just different things that we could connect on, like yoga and reading and all kinds of things. And so we were just a really good fit and had a couple of sessions. And then I went to college, and then the crisis started in 2019. So I had the crisis counseling and then switched back to my counselor that I have. And so I was able to be discharged from her that May of 2020. And then summer of 2021, I actually went back to her. And I've been seeing her since then. And I also just started EMDR therapy with another counselor in the Ankeny area.
For those listening who don't know what EMDR therapy is, can you tell us what that is like and how that's different from the therapist that you've been seeing?
Yeah, so the therapist I've been seeing for years is talk therapy. So that's all we do during our sessions is we talk through different things. EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So there are a couple ways that that can be done. You could follow a dot across a screen as it moves back and forth. You can tap back and forth on your legs going left to right. Or the one that we like to use is you hold two little things in your hands that are connected to a box, and they pulse in your hands, kind of vibrate. And that way you don't have to think about moving your eyes or tapping on your legs. And so that just will pulse, and you'll just think about a specific prompt that the therapist has given you.
So what is the point of like the tapping and those pulsing then? So what is that supposed to be working on?
It's from what I've been told, it's supposed to connect just the two sides of your brain and help you process things better. For me, I'm using it for PTSD. And so it is helping just more focused, and it just kind of like calms you down, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, it allows those messages that are happening that we're not fully aware of, but they're still happening. We're still getting those messages from our brain, but we're not able to cognitively process them on our own. They might be kind of stuck, or they're just not connected. And so being able to do the buzzies is awesome, or the light across is just a great way. It just connects those pieces. And so then when we get those subconscious messages, we know what to do with them. Our brain has another place to be able to process them and can bring it through and go, okay, I can understand what my body and what my brain is trying to tell me. And I can then use that to my benefit, which is awesome. So it's a great modeling of doing both, of doing talk therapy and adding EMDR. Because sometimes that can be confusing. People might be in EMDR and go, "Oh, I'm in therapy," or they might be in talk therapy and go, "Oh, I feel stuck, and it's not." There are things that I am able to process out verbally, and then there are things that I don't have words for. There are no words for those things that I need to process. And EMDR is such a great way to do that for those things that can't be processed through words. So it's a beautiful, beautiful example. And it sounds like you were going through your own symptomology, but then you were also grieving a best friend, and a best friend that was taken suddenly from you by the same kind of symptomology that you were experiencing. And so not only losing a best friend suddenly to suicide, but then also being in a place where you're experiencing those same symptoms that she was maybe experiencing at that time. What was that like?
It is really complicated because you're experiencing all the same emotions and you're like, oh my gosh, like I finally understand like what she was going through. But then also being like, there is no way like I could leave my family and my friends as devastated as we were left. And just knowing like the grief and the loss that comes from that is like a really good motivator, honestly. Which sounds kind of twisted, but it just knowing like the depth of what she felt and why she left really helped me understand it more.
Mm-hmm. So then you switched paths then when you took that year off from school, from English to BHIS and mental health. What led you to that? Was it your own journey with mental health that kind of got you interested in that field? Or why did you even start working in the PMIC facility?
Yeah, so it's there's a student job board for Iowa State. And so I'd seen this PMIC facility on that job board my entire time, just because turnover at those places can be pretty high. So they try to hire constantly. And so I'd seen it the entire time and I'd been like, oh, like that'd be cool to like keep working with kids because I still really love being with kids, even though I don't want to teach them. And so I just decided like on a whim to apply to this place and ended up loving it. So that was good. It was really hard, but it was really good.
And you said that when you started working at the PMIC facility, you discovered this love for the groups you were doing, the BHIS groups that you were doing. What do you love about BHIS?
For me personally, I like that you can see the changes actively happening in the kids. And also it's just a step removed from teaching. You're still teaching, like I had always wanted to do, but in a very different way. And there I did groups, but now I do individuals. And so just getting to have that little bit of my love for teaching still, as well as getting to connect with kids, which I've just always loved.
Mm-hmm. I started the same way. I was originally elementary education at Iowa State, and I was like, oh no, I don't want to teach. This is way too hard, too much work. But yeah, I found myself in this way too. So I agree, it is very similar, especially how we get to like plan our own activities and sessions and the things that we're doing with the kids in those sessions that we have. Can you give us some examples of activities that you do in session with clients?
Yeah, so some activities that I've been doing recently, I always play games, but some other things I've been doing are just different art projects with kids. It really just opens up an avenue for them to be creative and be a little distracted, and then they talk more, which is really interesting to see and just look back on my own life and be like, oh yeah, like when I'm distracted by things, I'm more willing to talk to people. And so I like doing different art projects. Like we did one with one of my clients where we put a little figure in the middle of a piece of paper and kind of did a collage around it with different positive affirmations because she struggles a lot with not being positive in the way she talks to herself. So I like doing different art projects and yeah, just games all the time. We played Life the other day, and that was really good teamwork for the siblings. So
What have you learned from your counseling experiences, good, bad, and indifferent, that has informed the kind of counselor that you want to be for your clients?
yeah, I think that I've learned um, that a lot of thought switching is necessary because the way that we think about ourselves can really greatly impact the way that we feel and the way that we act. And so just switching to positive mindsets, I just like to call it thought switching. So you take a negative statement and you're like, change it into a positive one or see a scenario in a positive light, even though it might not be the greatest moment in your life.
Mhm. Yeah, so like very strength-based thinking with your clients. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some of the behaviors and that you do work on with your clients? Can you give us some examples of what some of your his clients' behaviors are?
Yeah, so I have a lot of kids that have ADHD. So, working on maintaining attention, following directions, listening skills, and communication skills. I also have different clients that will struggle with getting physical with others, whether that's they get upset and so they grab something out of somebody's hand, they hit other people, stuff like that. And just like controlling that anger as well and learning conflict resolution skills.
It's difficult for children to use those techniques naturally. They, as humans, we don't naturally do that. We don't naturally, if there's 10 people out in the wild and we're not naturally going to share our resources. We're not naturally going to resolve conflict in a nonviolent way. Those are natural instincts to be aggressive, to get what we want, and to make our point the most prominent and not to listen to others. And so for children, unless we're taught these things intentionally, it's difficult to learn them. We learn them either through natural modeling, where we see other people doing them. We see our caregivers demonstrating those conflict resolution skills, or we see our teachers demonstrating that to us or prompting us in class. But aside from the natural role modelings, we don't have classes on how to resolve conflicts. We don't get classes on how to manage our anger and what to do with those feelings of frustration or disappointment. And so BHIS is so great because we're able to intentionally be teaching how to do those things, those skills, and then practice them. So it is such a beautiful marriage of teaching and counseling, supporting. And so we teach the skill and then we support them through trying to do it. Even something like focusing on a task and paying attention to a task, that's not a natural instinct to do. That's something that we as humans learn how to do. We either learn it the hard way or we learn it an intentional way, like in BHIS. And so I think it's so important, that work that you're doing with those children. How was group BHIS different from individual BHIS, or were there similarities?
There are definitely similarities where like I do a lot of the same kinds of projects. We would all do art projects together, or they would split into groups and do different things, just try to make it a little smaller and then collaborate as a group later in the session. But it is very different because my ages could be anywhere from 5 to 18, all in one group together. And it's very difficult to differentiate for the different ages there when they're all having to do the same activities and work together. So that's why I liked to do a lot of art projects and stuff like that, that were more hands-on for the kids, because then they could get what they needed out of it in different ways, different degrees. So.
And I know for us, when we do VHIS now, we go in home, so we work with the families and the parents as well. Can you give some examples of some activities you might do with parents to help them work on those skills with their children too?
Yeah, so with parents, I really like doing affirmations with parents where everybody gets a heart or they fill up a jar of love and something like that. And they all just have to say positive things that they like about each other, because a lot of times kids and parents will have those conflicts. And so it'll really put a strain on the relationship. So just hearing those positive things that they love about each other can be really beneficial, especially if they're struggling with their own self-talk.
As humans, we're wired to look for danger. So we're wired to look for the things that are not working. And so it takes intentional processing and programming to shift that thinking and to be able to look at something from a different perspective, and also to not have that new perspective invalidate the old perspective, being able to hold space for both things. Because it can be so difficult when we share with somebody, hey, I'm having a fight with my mom. I'm having an argument with my mom. And the person says, well, at least you have a mom. And we go,
yeah.
Super helpful. Thank you. In a very sarcastic tone. So what I love about it is we're teaching people how to do that, but not invalidate the initial negative feeling or uncomfortable feeling of I'm having an argument with my mom, right? So we can say, yeah, that is true. You're having an argument with your mom. You're feeling helpless in the conversation because you're feeling like she's not listening to you. You're feeling like she's not respecting that you are. You feel like all of those things are true. And at the same time, right, we can look at it from a different perspective as well. So I think that's a beautiful thing to be able to do that, not as a way to erase or not think about the uncomfortable side of it, but as in addition to that uncomfortable side of it, and holding space for both to be true is so beautiful. So when children come to do BHIS, they're typically doing that diagnostic assessment with us or with another therapist, and then we are using that diagnostic assessment to get them qualified for their behavioral intervention services. So right now, our clients their parents know before they come into the behavioral health services what their child's diagnosis is, or they got a diagnosis. For you were older, you were in college. And so what was that process like, explaining this diagnosis to your friends and family?
It was very scary. It just seems like a very big diagnosis, with just having to tell people, hey, like I have bipolar II and PTSD, and I just found out like this is all happening to me. All my friends knew that stuff was going on because they'd been my support system that summer and spring as like things had been happening. So they weren't surprised. And my parents also knew what was going on, so they weren't surprised either. But I think just the scariness that will come behind getting a diagnosis was really difficult to handle, as well as there's kind of a grief behind it too, because once you start having these experiences and these symptoms, like there's no going back for me because this is a chronic illness. So this is something that I had to reckon with for the entirety of my life now. I'll always be on meds. I'll always be in and out of therapy. So telling my family that this is my new natural time in life, my new normal, was really scary to do.
2 episodes ago, we talked with a guest who wrote a book and supported parents whose children were coming out as part of the LGBTQIA plus community. And we talked a lot about there are so many different ways that we as humans come out to the other people in our lives. Sexuality is just one part of who we are. And our mental health symptomology is just our brain chemistry is just part of who we are. And so what you're describing feels very much like that fear, that grief, that challenge of coming out to maybe not friends and family at first, because they know that you're struggling with some things, but he talked about how we're coming out to new people every day sometimes. And with a diagnosis, sometimes it feels like I'm coming out all the time to different people in my life, and sometimes having that same feeling as if I was coming out as gay or bisexual. I'm coming out that I've got this diagnosis. And I love that you talk about the grief that comes with that, because in some ways it becomes it's an acceptance process that you went through the grief. If you hadn't been going through an acceptance process of accepting yourself, accepting this diagnosis, accepting the things that come along with managing that, then you wouldn't have grief from this diagnosis. But because you were going through that acceptance process, and which is a very healthy process, there's healthy grief that comes with that. And when we hear the word grief, we think, oh, it's something we don't want. We don't want grief. But grief is so useful to us as humans. It's so necessary. It's not pleasant, but it's necessary, and it's so important towards that acceptance of this. So I love that you use the phrase "your new normal," because you were able to accept that this is who I am. This is part of who I am. I am always going to be too short to reach the top shelves in the kitchen. Like I have to accept that, right? And so there's always going to be a step stool in my kitchen, whether I have a child in the house or not. And that's just my life. That's just who I am, right? My husband is always going to wear glasses or contacts. That is just part of his life, and that's what he's going to do. That's his normal. And it's the same thing with our mental health diagnoses. Sometimes it feels like relief because, okay, well, I know what this is now, but now there's a lot that comes with that. And there is that grief process. I think that's so important to be talking about and sharing with others, that is a normal part. It's a healthy thing, but it's not pleasant. Nobody likes it. It's not fun. But my goodness, is it necessary? So I just think that there's so much in what you just said and what you just shared that is so important. And there's a stigma too to certain diagnoses. You said that, when you say bipolar II, the stigma that can sometimes come with, the assumptions that can come with, as a Korean-born, adopted Korean, when people see me, I'm coming out as Korean. And there are assumptions sometimes that are made about that, right? And so the same is true with our mental health diagnoses. When we say to somebody, I have bipolar II and I have PTSD, there are assumptions sometimes that come with that. What's been your experience with those assumptions and that stigma?
I think the biggest thing is just maybe not assumptions, but the way that people will talk about it, which kind of goes along with that. But people will just very casually say that they're feeling manic or they're feeling bipolar that day just because they had like the smallest shift in their mood. They don't understand the gravity of what that means to people who are experiencing that actual mental illness. And so just seeing how cavalierly people will talk about different things can be really hurtful. But yeah, the different assumptions people will make, there's definitely people will be a little bit like, oh, like I have to be careful. Like I might make her get upset. Like I don't want to make her switch moods, that kind of stuff. So just teaching people that no, like you're still allowed to be fully authentic around me. Like it's not going to do anything. I'm in control of my emotions just like you're in control of yours, is a thing that I have to do with my friends now. So it's just another new normal.
What are some ways that, like, since you've been diagnosed with bipolar, that your life has changed? Or what are some things like do you have medication now? Is there different ways that you like have learned to cope with bipolar disorder?
Yeah, something really helpful with bipolar disorder is not just therapy, but also medication management.
Mhm.
And so when I was able to get stable in May of 2020, that was because a combination of both therapy and we had found the right med combination for me at the time. Um, and so, yeah, meds are something that changed drastically in my life. I was not able to swallow pills before I got bipolar, and then I had to because I take them twice a day. Um, yeah, so meds are probably one of the biggest changes. And then also just making sure I have a really set routine that I follow because change can be really difficult for me. And if I'm out of my routine, then I'm more likely for my moods to switch.
Absolutely. There's a sometimes that sense of loss of freedom when that structure is so important, when that routine is so important, where, for whatever reason, we need to follow a certain routine or structure. Uh, Again, that grief component, we can grieve for that freedom that we used to have, that I could be at my friend's house and I could go, oh, let me stay the night. I'm just going to sleep here. Not possible when we have to take certain medications, right? So just those things that come about that we have a sense of loss, because if we didn't, then we would just stay over, right? It does change our lives in those ways. And I love that you bring up too how our mental health diagnoses terms have really come into our language and our popular culture language as slang. And so saying, oh, I feel so manic today, or oh, I'm so depressed today, or saying, oh, I feel bipolar, right? Because I had a good day and then a bad day, or PTSD. People will say, oh, I have PTSD about a spider being in my house now. Maybe, but not necessarily, right? And OCD is another one that people use a lot. In our popular culture, it's become slang for saying I'm very particular, or saying I'm very cautious, or I'm very clean, or people will use that term OCD, and it can be very, very hurtful. Because it is not validating, it is not showing an understanding of what it actually means to have those diagnoses. Because when we say, oh, I'm OCD about my pens being in the right pocket of my coat, or whatever it is, that is not acknowledging or validating the pain that comes with having that diagnosis. And so I think that it's such a great conversation to have. Are there other ways that you see bipolar 2 or bipolar 1 even coming into popular culture that are challenging when you have the diagnosis?
Um, this one is really interesting, I guess, because most people, for a lot, of it, it's actually a very positive thing that this is being talked about and shown. But Selena Gomez is bipolar, and she just came out with a whole little documentary that was showing like what her life was like with all of her different diagnoses. And that's amazing. And I love that we have like a very positive role model there in Selena Gomez, and that she's sharing like the gravity of what it's like. But as somebody with bipolar, like I haven't been able to watch it yet because I know that she's going to talk about really hard things that I've gone through myself. And so I just am not like in the place where I'm able to watch that yet.
Yeah, I've heard about it too, but I have not watched it yet either. But I didn't even know that was one of the diagnoses that she mentions. That is interesting. I know you mentioned like routine and things like that that you need to have to help like keep your symptoms in check. Are there other things that you have found that are helpful for you?
It's mostly routines and like being consistent with my meds because if I don't take them for a few days, like that's going to throw me out of whack. But also just having this sounds really funny because I'm talking to you guys, but having like a job that is very easy to give grace to you and just understands mental illness is really huge because I've had jobs where they're like, oh, like, no, you actually can't leave today. Like, we told you to go to your therapy appointment. And they don't understand how important it is that I keep that routine. And so, yeah, just having my routines, my meds, and then people who understand support network as well is super important to me. Connection is just really huge.
Absolutely. And as people who work with you, we know that you actively seek and facilitate and build connection with those around you. And I think that it's, if yes, it's important for you and taking care of yourself, but it's a beautiful symptom. It's a beautiful, problem in air quotes to have because it helps so many people around you as well. When you're seeking to build those connections for yourself, you can't help but build connections for other people around you. And structure and routine, it really can have that same positive, ripple effect in our lives. So when we have structure and routine and we know, okay, I need to do this for me, that is positively impacting the other people in my household or in my life, because if they need structure and routine, they know that they can count on mine and can build off of mine for their own structures and routines. So I think that those are some of those things that you're doing for yourself. They have those unintended positive benefit to the people around you. And it is such a great tip to be seeking out those situations that allow for those things that you need, because those things come first. Those things are most important. And then being able to seek out, okay, my husband, for example, has ADHD. We talked about that last week. And he could not have a job where he clocked in and clocked out. I mean, it just would not, or sat at a desk in a cubicle and had to make phone calls or, do stuff while sitting down all day. It would not ever happen. He would be terrible at that job. And he knows that about himself. And so he says, okay, any job that I do, I need to be able to build these things into it so that I can be successful at that job. So those are so important. And I love that you're intentionally doing those as you build your life around your new normal, who you are as a person. This is just one piece of who you are. And all of those pieces are important and deserve space in your life, deserve your life to be built around you versus trying to cram who you are into something else. So I think that is so beautiful and so helpful. So if you could give one suggestion to somebody who might be on the fence about starting counseling, what suggestion might you give that person?
I think I would tell them to look first before you choose a counselor to try out, just like I did with my very first counselor that I still see. Like that was very successful for me to go see, oh, like there are these things that I can connect with her about, even if the session's going terribly, like I can talk about my love for this. And yeah, just finding somebody that you think is going to be a good fit.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I'm Ruth Gladwyn-Nash, and I need a counselor.
Awesome. Me too. So does Krista. I love when counselors go to counseling. We had a guest a couple weeks ago that said that should be a requirement for all counselors to go to counseling. And gosh, I agree. It's so important that we be supported while we are supporting other people. So wonderful, wonderful advice there. Thank you so much, Ruth, for being on the show. We appreciate it. And you are doing amazing work out there doing BHIS with those students. I love that you're bringing that energy of loving to work with young people, loving to teach and contribute to their lives as they grow, and using that in your BHIS work with those families. It's beautiful. So if you are interested if you're in Iowa and you're interested in meeting with Ruth, even if you are not anywhere near a Heart and Solutions office, you can sign up for telehealth sessions with Ruth. So anywhere in the state of Iowa, if you have a child that qualifies for BHIS, she can do telehealth sessions, and it's still games. It's still arts and crafts and activities and fun stuff. It's just on the computer, but it's still fun. So give us a call. Also, if you are in the Ames, Ankeny, or Waukee or surrounding areas, and you're interested in in-person BHIS, behavioral health intervention sessions for your children, give us a call for that as well and ask for Ruth. And our phone number is 800-531-4236. If you are watching this video on YouTube, please like this video, please share it, or leave us a comment to let us know, have you experienced a diagnosis that you had to come out about? Have you experienced, or has somebody ever come out with a diagnosis to you? What was that like? Leave us a comment, let us know. And if you are a mental health therapist listening to this episode, check out our Patreon page if you need play therapy CEUs. We've got live ones every single month. And then we have our recorded library where you can get those recorded CEUs at any time, day or night. 2 a.m. CEUs is a real thing. And you can go log into Patreon and take that quiz, take that recording at any time that it suits you. So check us out at patreon.com/Heart and Solutions.
And like Julie mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we post new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central. So save up your laundry or whatever task you hate doing and listen to us on Sundays while you get that done. And then we can help connect you with our counselor or get started with services that week as well. And if you have any questions for us, you can reach us on our Facebook page at You Need a Counselor Podcast or on our Instagram at You Need a Counselor Podcast. Or we also now have a phone number where you can send us a text or leave a voicemail anonymously, and we can answer those questions on our next episode as well. So our number for that is 515-650-3231. So I'm Krista Hunt.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the You Need a Counselor podcast. We are so grateful that you are here. Now, we want to hear from you. Text us or give us a call at 515-650-3231. You can also find the You Need a Counselor podcast on Facebook and Instagram. If you've enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to like, review, and comment, as all of these things help others to find and benefit from this podcast as well. If you're in the state of Iowa and interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health intervention services, give us a call at 1-800-531-4236. And if you're a provider seeking play therapy CEUs, you can find us at patreon.com/YouNeedATraining. We'll see you for the next episode, Sunday at 5.